I got a tendency to do that myself. Always get ahead of myself, when usually I would be running way behind. Mike Barrett in. We mentioned good policies. Happens Tuesday mornings at this time. We make clearer to understand things that are going on in the world of insurance. Mike, good to have you in here this morning.
Hey, nice to be here. Nice to be here. Still no audio, though.
There you go.
Hey-oh. There we go.
Mike, one of our few guests that actually dons the headphones because he actually used to sit in the same chair that I'm sitting in, although it had a different covering back in those days.
No, it had covering back in those days. Right now it's just a...
Oh, no, this was reupholstered like 8 years ago. So, Mike, some exciting things going on. Not exciting things in the world of insurance, but in the world of Barrett Insurance Agency, you let us know about a month ago or so that you guys are looking at a new property, but you're still going to be on Portland Street.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Going really well. We if you drive by, it was I still call it Dr. Hoppy's office. I probably always will. But it's the future home of Barrett Insurance. And right now, we've been in there cleaning, painting, and dreaming of what we want to do. And now the dreaming has turned into reality. We got contractors that have started yesterday, and they're again there today and working their tookuses off to get things in a matter of us being able to move in there. We were hoping for August 1st to be our target date. We have let the reality of it all settle in. More like a mid-August move in. So
let me ask you this here. Does the smell of sawdust not be as appealing to you now? Because you like when you smell it every once in a while. Yeah. It's like, oh, I love that smell.
Oh, I still love it.
Okay.
I love we've been having a heck of a fun time doing it. I mean, I realized that if insurance doesn't work out for me, I might be able to be a painter because I've gotten really good at painting. So,
well, being a second-generation family owners, I don't think you're going to have any problem working with insurance. So, no, that's great. Keep us up to date on that, okay, as we get closer and closer to it. I mean, a bummer is not going to be the first, but, I mean, you want to make sure everything's done up right.
There's only going to be one opportunity to get in there and get in there right, and right now we have a blank canvas with with very little in the building, so you don't have to work around things. So let's get it right, and then we can get in. So
all right. So what we'll do then is we'll dub it. We'll see if we can get it approved with the St. J. Chamber. I'm making joke of this, okay? We'll call it the Hoppy Barrett.
Hoppy Barrett.
All right. So that's an update on that. What else is going on with Barrett? What's going on in insurance you want to talk about?
Yeah. So I see a lot of this lately, and I thought it might be a good conversation to come back with. We've talked in the past about flood insurance. Flood insurance is kind of the necessary beast for some properties. Truth be told, any property anywhere could buy flood insurance. It's just how and when and how much. So one of the things I'm seeing now and why I thought might be a valid point to bring up is we're seeing more and more now the banks, when you are getting a mortgage for a property, there is a flood determination process for them. You'll notice it because it's part of your closing costs that you're paying that they had to do a determination. So property that may not currently have flood insurance, a bank is looking to finance it for a new purchaser, that bank could find that there is a need or a requirement, I should say, for flood insurance.
Now, do I remember correctly here in past conversations where we brought this up that anybody that lives, say, like where we are right now, okay, in the Passumpsic River Valley, they are in a floodplain and they're required to have flood insurance?
A lot of Lyndonville is.
Okay.
There are portions. I'll give you an example. If you're going down towards the junction of 114 and 5, a lot of the areas past the bridge, past the covered bridge as you're coming towards the village, a lot of those areas, their backyards are in the special flood hazard area, but maybe the properties that are on Main Street are not, or on the road may not be there. Whereas some of the other properties on the other side of town are definitely in the high risk zone.
Well, like St. Johnsbury Center, too, the stretch along Passumpsic Bank, that's considered floodplain because it almost always seems to flood.
Right.
So as somebody's going into purchasing a property, whether it's for a domestic dwelling or for a business, they want to look into that.
Yeah, because if you are in what's identified as an SFHA, which is a special flood hazard area, then you will be required, if you're getting any kind of financing, to carry flood insurance because it'll be a requirement of the bank because the banks have to comply with the federal regulations because they are federally regulated. So you will find many cases where you might have to get flood insurance. Now, I find even people buying camp properties might be in floodplains, even though they're not necessarily in participating FEMA towns, meaning you can't buy the National Flood Insurance Program. The banks are finding that these are in flood areas where you'll probably have to get flood insurance through a private flood insurance carrier, which we have. We have many of those options as well. So we're finding that we're having to write flood policies just so people can get a loan.
Now, I do remember this, too. There is a technicality, a difference between, and I'm going to use the term that people use, my basement flooded.
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Now, flood is one thing, but water runoff is another, right?
So flood really is, the definition of flood does vary. So the National Flood Insurance Program has their definition of flood, which you have to meet to be eligible for coverage in their program. And then the private companies have their own definitions, which, interestingly enough, you would think they'd be more constricted. They're actually more comprehensive. They're actually broader. So that's actually, some of those have better coverage triggers. Now, it's an inundation of water. So that inundation of water has to affect so many neighbors or so many acres of land for it to be really defined as a flood. Now, why do they do it that way? Because if you have a basement prone to water coming in, that's groundwater seepage. That is not flood. Now, if that same basement takes on water, but it's the result of a large swath of land getting inundated with water and maybe multiple neighbors, well, boom. There you have a different scenario where if you have flood insurance, you may have a trigger of coverage.
So spring runoff, heavy rains, broken water lines up the road, those would be not considered flood, right?
Well, broken water line up the road, depending on how much it impacts, that could become something. But yeah, so you want to pay attention to the definitions of flood on the flood policies. Like I said, it's a little more restricted on the National Flood Insurance Program. Not to say that they're trying to deny claims; they just have a smaller scope of what's really truly defined as flood. Now, remember, a flood policy covers one thing: flood. Doesn't cover anything else. And why is that? Because most other policies in the property and casualty world, which would be a homeowner insurance policy, a business owner's insurance policy, a commercial policy, they exclude flood. So this is the filler that you need to get the flood coverage that's not available on the other policies.
So the common denominator, other than the property owner themselves wanting flood insurance, the common denominator seems to be the banks requiring it for financing that property.
Yeah, and I hate to say, my typical rule is do not ever get insurance because somebody told you to. I mean, obviously you have to, right? But that should not be your deciding factor. If you're in an area that's prone to flood, the same village that we talked about here in Lindenville, St. Johnsbury, and surrounding towns have low-risk flood areas that are still prone to a possibility of flood, that you could get flood insurance instead of thousands of dollars, maybe a few $100s a year. And you know what? Some people may like that comfort of just saying, you know what? I'm not in a special flood hazard area. I can get preferred rates on this flood insurance program. It's worth $200 a year to have some flood insurance.
And as your commercials say, as we wrap it up here, the worst time to find out
how good your insurance
is when a loss happens. So tell folks how to get in touch with you.
You can give us a call, 748-5224. We are and will remain on Portland Street in St. Johnsbury, online, thebarrettagency.com, Google, Facebook, and YouTube. Just look for Barrett Insurance Agency.
And Magic in the Morning at 8:35 on Tuesdays.
Absolutely.
Thank you much, my friend. We'll see you in a week.
All right.
And we go back to music with Savage Garden.